Hey everyone, this is Fabio and welcome back, and tonight it's time for a new game discussion video. I know from zero to two in just like a couple of days. What's happening? A game discussion video on this game right here on the 3DS, as you can see, Castlevania Lords of Shadow Mirror of Fate. And before starting, I just want to clarify some things here. I never played the Lords of Shadow games on PS3, 360, but I want to, and I will eventually, because I love Castlevania. It's one of my favorite series of all time. Since I've played the first game on the NES, that's how far I actually go with the series. It's the original Castlevania. It's actually one of the first games I remember playing, so you can say that I'm really nostalgic about the series. I love it to death, and I really wanted to play this one on the 3DS. And I'm so sad that I don't have a Castlevania on my Vita, and of course I have to wait on Bloodstain, since of course I'm gonna get that on the Vita whenever that Castlevania game it's going to be released. I love the quotations, since we all know the game's made by Iga, one of the main force behind the Castlevania games since Symphony of the Night. So, getting sidetracked already, but so I never touched the Lords of Shadow games. However, I read some things here and there, watched some videos here and there, and I generally know like roughly the story. So like I know the big thing that happens, I suppose, at the end of the first one. So that kind of helps in figuring out this game, which I suppose is sort of conclusion of the trilogy, because it seems for what I know, it seems, for what I understand playing the game, it takes place after Lords of Shadow 2. The story it's kind of simple, and in a way that's expected from a Castlevania game, because in the grand scheme of things, in a Castlevania, the story it's kind of secondary. It's not what's like in the first place, like in an RPG, because the general idea in a Castlevania game is that you have to kill Dracula. That's your story. And many times when they try to put like complicated stories or something, it's kind of a distraction, I would say. But this story was alright, even though I think they kind of confuse the orders here. I mean, it's divided into 3 acts. You play as 3 different characters, even though they play exactly the same, I have to say. You start as Simon Belmont, then you move to Alucard, and finally you end the game with Trevor Belmont. Personally, I think they should have done it a bit differently. It's not a complaint. I mean, it was fine like this. I think would it make more sense? Would it be better if the story was slightly different? So personally, I would have done like this. I would start with Trevor Belmont's story, because it has a good twist at the end. I don't understand why they kept it for the end of the game. Instead, it's a great way to start the game, actually, because, spoiler alert, but this is an old game, and as I said, if you're Castlevania fans, you wanted to play Lords of Shadows, you already did, so I'm just late joining the party. As you know, Gabriel Belmont, the kind of the first of the clan, because as we know, Lords of Shadow is its own separate thing. It's not connected with all the rest of the Castlevania universe. Gabriel Belmont defeated the Lords of Shadow, and in the process, he actually became Dracula. So, a nice classic fallen hero story. And basically, Trevor's story is focused on him fighting Dracula. But the great thing, that's the only spoiler I want to give you, but it makes sense for my idea of the story. He fails at the end. He fails in killing Dracula. I thought that was a perfect way to start the game, actually, not finish it. Because you finish on this depressing note, even though you already knew, in a way, by playing the rest of the game before. So personally, I would start with Trevor, and him failing. That's a good twist, I would say, because it doesn't happen that often of a main hero failing his mission. Then you move to, I would say, 2/3 of Simon Belmont's story. Then you move to Alucard, because in this game they also like revisited Alucard's origin, which I have to be honest was kind of stupid, but that's fine. And finally, the last third of Simon's story, and that's the end. That would have made more sense, I think, in a narrative perspective, and also like the twist of Trevor's failing was an excellent, I think, input for the story. But other than that, the story overall was good. It was nothing special. As I said, it's a Castlevania game. The story is not the first thing you pay attention to. I mean, not really. Especially in this kind of game, because I suppose like Lords of Shadow, the first one has a much bigger story. The whole quest of Gabriel Belmont fighting the Lords of Shadows, but in here, not really, because Mercury's team actually returned to a more Metroidvania format. And because of this, we're moving to my main issues with the game. One, it's kind of secondary, I would say. I didn't mind it that much, actually, because this game is a Metroidvania, so it was an awesome return to form, I would say, because to me, Castlevania should be 2D, and this game wasn't. Let me clarify immediately, but this is the format that we kind of need the Castlevania games be, not does God of Wars want to be like Lords of Shadow 1 and 2. But the problem with this, and as I said, this is a secondary issue, I didn't mind in the grand scheme of things, but I noticed. The problem is, if you have, especially when compared to older Metroidvania Castlevanias, and I just loved saying those two words one after the other, with older games in the series, especially the amazing 3 games on the DS, Dawn of Sorrow, Port of Ruin, and Order of Ecclesia, if you compare them with this, there's no story there. I mean, those 3 are vastly superior. Because in a Metroidvania game, the main focus should be the exploration. It wasn't in here. I mean, exploration was kept to a bare minimum. The general idea is that you reached a sort of like a fork road, and you go right, and then you say, oh, I cannot go forward because I need an ability, so I go back, go left, and after not that much time, oh, I got the ability, so I can go right now. So, as I said, kept to an essential minimum, which it's fine, but as I said, if you play a game like Port of Ruin or my personal favorite Metroidvania game, Order of Ecclesia, that's night and day. You are exploring these huge levels. And the beauty of Order of Ecclesia is that it's not confined to the castle alone. You can explore like a cemetery, a forest, a lighthouse, or something. There's more to it. And then, of course, there's Dracula's castle, of course. But that's like 60% of the game, not the whole thing, like Symphony of the Night, of course, or Port of Ruin, the Sorrow games. I mean, every Metroidvania ones that always takes place inside a castle. Since Symphony of the Night, I kind of miss the idea like the old school games, which will always be my favorites, like the original trilogy on the NES, Super Castlevania 4. It's my favorite of the series, where you can explore something else, not just the castle. But apart from that, like as I say, let's just keep on Order of Ecclesia since it's my favorite. You have like these huge places that you have to explore. There is a ton of backtracking that's in here, as I said. It's kept to a minimum. Once you get your ability, yes, you can go back, and that's it. You got everything you need, and you proceed. So it's, if you are a big fan of the Metroidvania aspect, it's there, but it's not very strong. On the other hand, the main focus of the game, I would say, it's actually the combat. I know that the Lords of Shadow games on PS3 360 are more like action games, like as I call them, like God of War wannabe, because they really look like that, and it's nothing wrong with it. It's just say, for a Castlevania perspective, it's a bit weird, personally, but I still need to play them, so I cannot really judge them. And but as I said, the main focus in here was clearly the combat, which was a lot of fun. I actually liked combat in this game. You level up to, again, the leveling was really bare bones, I would say, because contrary to the previous Metroidvania games, where you can grind or level up to an insane, probably like level 99 kind of things, in here you reach a maximum level of 18, which is a very random number, I would say. I would at least 20. But in each level you unlock a new skill with your whip, until you have everything you need to face like a boss or Dracula at the end. But as I said, like, combat, it's a lot of fun. I loved fighting these enemies, using all these tricks with my whip or something, because as combat goes, it kind of reminded me of a classic Castlevania game, which it's more about your skill with the whip than just leveling up and getting stronger, and as I always call it, using tricks to beat the game. With this, it's you level up, but you don't get stronger per se. I mean, you get new skills, and of course, combat in here is much more advanced than, say, Super Castlevania 4. But the idea, it's very similar. I mean, your levels almost don't matter while facing an enemy. It's all about your skills in combat, and I really, really like that. Because I prefer that kind of gameplay over like the simply just grinding levels, getting stronger, and obliterate everything. I don't mind it, of course, because I play tons of games like that, but I just prefer the older ways, and this was a sort of reminder of that, or like a sort of perfected way. I mean, the better thing is just having like a Super Castlevania 4 with those moves with the whip. That would be amazing. Let's move to the graphics, and this is a much bigger issue that I have with the game. I mean, it looks fine. I mean, it's a gorgeous looking game on the 3DS, or at least it looks good to me. But I'm very easy to please. I mean, right now I'm playing Crimson Gem Saga on the PSP, and boy, I love those graphics. But the thing is, again, as this is a Castlevania game, I don't want this 2.5D graphics, even though they're good. From a technical point of view, but personally, I didn't want this. I mean, I don't say don't like them. It's misleading in a way. As I said, I would have preferred if they would have used like sprites or like pixels, like old school graphics, like the DS games, or something like the another Metroid 2 remake. Those kind of like awesome looking Super Nintendo-ish graphics. That would have been perfect. Instead, we have this sort of 2D in a 3D setting, which it's kind of cool. I played the game most of them with the 3D on for some reason. As I say, it looks good. It's good graphics, but for this kind of game, I would have loved to be much more old school than this. And again, it's just a matter of preference, but since I'm so used, like, look at the DS games again, like Portal of Ruin or Order of Ecclesia. I love those games. Those games are gorgeous to look at. With this, you can say like, yeah, this is nice, but I would prefer something different, or at least me. And again, also the game has cutscenes which are voice acted. Well, they were okay, nothing too spectacular. I didn't mind them, but again, I would have preferred something more of like an old school experience, sort of like the DS games, that you have this just dialogues with sprites of the characters. For example, in Dawn of Sorrow and Portal of Ruin, they have this anime style. In Order of Ecclesia, you have a more mature style. Something like that would be perfect. But in here, it works fine. Talking about the graphics, they were good. I'm not complaining. I just said I would have preferred something more old school. But just because that's what I prefer, of course. If you like the graphics, they're good. I'm no complaints on the quality. But it's just as a preference, I would have won something more to the older games. But my biggest issue with this game, it's actually the music. Now, this was a disappointment because, I mean, the music was all right at best. And to me, this is kind of unacceptable because this is a Castlevania game, and Castlevania used us to amazing, unforgettable soundtracks. I mean, since the NES days, we still humming and listen to like Vampire Killer, Bloody Tears, Beginning, those memorable tunes, and don't even start with Super Castlevania 4. That is one of the best soundtrack of all time. One of my favorite pieces of some of my favorite pieces of music on the Super Nintendo are from that game. Symphony of the Night, Order of Ecclesia, Portal of Ruin, the Sorrow games. I mean, even Circle of the Moon has a better soundtrack than this. Harmony of Dissonance, the music, it's very questionable, but at least as variety, they're trying. With this, they use the same sort of atmospheric tunes here and there, which, as I said, there were some decent tracks here and there. Like I didn't mind the menu theme because it kind of fits the atmosphere while you're looking at your inventory or the map. And I want to say, like, one feature that I really like and took advantage of the stylus, for example, was the map that you can put like pinpoints, like if there's a door that you cannot open because you need an ability, you can leave it there so you can remember. So that's very smart. But the music was really, I will say, the weakest point of the game, which is even more disappointing, as I say, because it's a Castlevania game. It's a series that's supposed to have good music. Think of Castlevania Judgment on the Wii. That game is a piece of shit, but it has phenomenal music for some reason. And it's been like this since the beginning. I mean, now I never played the Game Boy games, for example, so probably that's more limited due to technological limits, but this is the 3DS. I play games such as Tales of the Abyss, Fire Emblem Awakening, and there are amazing music, and I'm sure the games like Metroid, Stella Glow, Fire Emblem Echoes, Bravely Default, they all have phenomenal music. But unfortunately, this was a huge disappointment in terms of soundtrack, which, in the grand scheme of things, might be secondary to some of you. But for me, as a die-hard Castlevania fan, the music, it's part of the whole experience. I mean, think of Order of Ecclesia. When you reach Dracula's castle with an empty tone in the background, oh my god, you're ready to go and kicking some ass. I mean, it's unforgettable. Or while you're exploring the castle in Symphony of the Night with that music. I mean, or even back to the NES, as I said, when, as Simon Belmont, you start the game with that unforgettable tune. I mean, that's Castlevania music, not these. I don't know why they did this, because I would imagine that the Lords of Shadow games have good music, maybe, since they're on the PS3 or 360, but I haven't played them, so I don't know. Let me know if you have played them, because music is a very important deal in a Castlevania game. So overall, even though I mentioned a lot of issues here and there, these are, with the exception of the music, the graphics and the gameplay are more like nitpicks here and there. I mean, the graphics are kind of the secondary thing because they were good. I just would have preferred something different. The whole exploration part, they could have done better, I think. Like, the dungeons for the most part were kind of small and easy to... There almost wasn't the need to backtrack, which is kind of missing the point of a Metroidvania game. But compared to what we had, and the fact that we don't have Castlevania games coming in the future, for what I know, because that's a tragedy of the state of Konami. Mirror of Fate, I would say, it's an really must if you like Castlevania, and it might be also a good entry point into the series if you're new to it, because it's very easy, because also Castlevania games are famous for their difficulty. Yeah, I died quite a lot in here, but for the most part because I fall into pits or something. The only boss that gave me some troubles was during Alucard's story, that Demon Lord puppet or something. It was kind of tough, but apart from that, it was not very tough, so that wasn't disappointing, because This was exactly the kind of game I needed after Tales of the Abyss. I really needed a palate cleanser. And it took me like 11 hours. I did like 99% in the game. So it's perfect if you need a distraction. It has a really fun combat system. I really like that. And it's interesting, the thing, and this is the last thing, I found it very interesting that most people on YouTube really like this, like Castlevania fans, like Alex Return to Mother Base, Senkai from Accident Gamers, even like bigger ones like RTG85. They all say that this is a very good game, and I agree with them. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, uh, it has a weird reputation, but because, for example, I read that IGN gave this game a really crap score for some reason. Obviously, it's the usual like gamers versus critics. We can start talk about that, but that's not necessary. So, Mirror of Fate, I would say, if you like Castlevania, definitely give it a shot because I think you can find it for quite cheap. It's a lot of fun on the 3DS, and we always need Castlevania games. I mean, we can get enough. And as I said, this is kind of the last chance before all the crap hit the fan with Konami. So that's my 2 cents on that. I'm really, really happy that I played it, and now I'm ready to move on to something different. And that's it. So thanks so much for watching, guys, like always. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Take care.